Hi, I'm Femi Okay.
I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream.
Today, citizens demanding dignity in Morocco. We'll look at the protest movement for the city of al-Hoceima.
Now, if you've been following this story online, you've likely noticed one hashtag in particular. Take a look at my laptop here. Nazer on Twitter from Morocco explains hashtag Hirak, or movement. It refers to a shortened Arabized nickname for the protests seen here, and it translates to the popular movement of the Rif. That's the northern coastal region of Morocco, which we'll get more insight into during today's show.
What kind of change needs to happen to resolve recent unrest in Morocco? Protests in northern Morocco have been ongoing since the end of October. On July 20th, thousands of citizens defied a government ban and continued to voice their demands for greater development and jobs in the coastal Rif region.
There's repression everywhere. They're firing tear gas at us. We have nothing in this Morocco. We don't want confrontation. We're asking for our rights peacefully. But they want to give us nothing.
In recent months, authorities have cracked down on activists and more than 150 protesters have been arrested. The movement in al-Hoceima was sparked by the death of a local fish seller, Mohsin Fikri, whose body was crushed inside a rubbish truck as he tried to retrieve fish that was confiscated by police. Many have compared the incident to the death of Mohamed Bouzizi, the Tunisian fruit vendor who set himself on fire, and that was back in 2011 and was a catalyst for greater protests around the Arab world. In today's show, we'll look at Morocco and protesters' fight for social and economic justice. With us in Lille, France, Lina Sharif, an activist from al-Hoceima. In Rabat, Omar Radi, an investigative journalist. And Suhail Karam is a journalist who has been covering the protests. Welcome, everybody. Lina, your family are from al-Hoceima. You know it really well. If you were going to take us on a tour of the region, where would you take us to explain why people are so unhappy? What would you show us?
Well, if I should take people on a journey in al-Hoceima, of course, you should go to see the oppression in the center of al-Hoceima, as you have seen in all the videos. But also, I would love to take the people to the deep mountains of the Rif, to where the people where the people do not know what is electricity and what is a decent life, what is a decent shelter, where the people are really suffering from having nothing at all but the miserable life that they are accused for during all their life.
Suhail, you've been covering this region, particularly the protests of this region, and give us a better idea of what it is like in the Rif region compared to the rest of Morocco. What's different?
Well, the Rif region is no exception in terms of basically the deficits that a lot of Moroccan regions witness in terms of lack of infrastructure, lack of jobs, lack of opportunities, and basically mostly the poor governance, public governance that acts as an impediment to encourage investors, whether they are local or foreign investors. What distinguishes the Rif is basically a big reliance on the grey and informal economy. That's not by design, it's rather by default, for lack of alternatives. And also quite a high proportion of you have basically in the Rif region, I think, the highest concentration of Moroccan migrants. I mean, if you were to compare it to other regions, you find that there is a greater percentage of Rifians who have relatives who live abroad. And the other thing is, of course, the high prevalence of cancer. That is that actually constitute one of the main demands or one of the main leitmotifs for the protest movement in the Rif.
Do you want to explain that cancer connection? Yes, Lina, go ahead.
But just as adding to what he says, of course, it is just as poor as the other regions of Morocco, that is sure. But what make people go out to protest is also this peculiar history of the Rif, the history of people who beat colonialism back then, and now they have this spirit of always searching for dignity, freedom, social justice, and this perfume of wanting a decent life in their own country, and they are ready to sacrifice anything to protect their lives, to protect their land, to protect their dignity. And this what make also Rif a peculiar region, and also not forgetting the people, the diaspora of the Rif. How did they got here? How did they were beaten out of Morocco, I would say, and not immigrate? And all this history full of blood, full of venom from the government. And this is what made also the Rif people feel like they are second citizens and not really citizens of Morocco. Of course, poverty is spreading all over Morocco, but I would say in the Rif is not just a question of poverty, but it is also a question of lack of dignity, I suppose.
It's the poverty, it's the lack of dignity. Those are both things that people online are sharing with us as well. This is one tweet from someone who explains what life is like in their point of view. Life in the Rif is harsh. Tens of thousands are still plowing the ground with mules and donkeys. And for 60 years, the region has been a military zone. Another person writes in addition, people in the region are demanding social improvement to their daily lives, a local hospital, a local university, kind of echoing the things you said a little bit earlier. But this last tweet showing us what life is like is indicative of something bigger. This is Emily, and she says non-Rifi Moroccans are typically indifferent to Rif protests at best. So do these protesters feel that they have wider support this time? Omar, what is it about these protests that we're seeing now that have resonated with people outside of the region?
Well, I wanted to add before for your first question to Lina and Suhail that what is shocking more in the Rif region, because the lacking infrastructure and jobs is all over Morocco. What is shocking is the militarization of the region. And what I saw last week when I went there to see the demobilization of July 20th, I never seen that before in Morocco under Mohammed VI's reign. Cops everywhere and security bodies, diverse security bodies, securing all the city and all the streets of the city to prevent people from express their opinion and express their anger, including also diaspora members who came especially for the event. So I think this is the militarization is felt by the population as a humiliation, and a humiliation related to the conflictuality of the past of the Rif region and Rabat. But although all this presence of police, I heard that tens of thousands of police agents were there. People succeeded to gather, even for some minutes, and they gather, and it shows some determination of those people to break all what the state wants to break all the strategy of the state to stop them. Even after arresting all the leadership of the movement, they continued. They continued, and I think they continue because all the solutions designed by the state to stop and satisfy the movement did not work.
Okay. I want to introduce this photograph. We talked about Mohsin Fikri in the introduction to this program. This is a showing of a picture on Twitter by one of his cousins, Samira. Let me just show you the picture here. He was a fishmonger. The protest started after he was killed when he was trying to retrieve some fish. He was banned from fishing swordfish. It was out of season, and then he was crushed as he was trying to get the swordfish out of the rubbish truck. And then this man became, yes, Suhail, this man became the catalyst for another set of protests coming out of the Rif region. How have the government reacted to it, Suhail? How have the government reacted to this latest protests?
Well, Mohsin Fikri's death has definitely been, I would say, the drop that has kind of made the glass overflow. But there has been a lot of historic presidents, and Mohsin Fikri is definitely not. It's definitely the most horrific, but it's not the most poignant in the Rifians' memory. Just 5 years or 6 years ago, back in 2011, when Moroccans took to the streets for the first time under the banner of the Arab Spring protests to demand more democracy and more rights. Al-Hoceima has witnessed the highest death toll that has ever been recorded throughout almost a year of protests. It's 5 youths, young men from al-Hoceima. Their bodies were found charred inside a bank. And the relatives, until this day, up to this day, haven't had, are still waiting for the truth to be delivered. And for instance, the footage of closed circuit cameras to be released to divulge really how the bodies of these 5 young men ended up inside the bank and charred. And of course, as Lina has mentioned earlier, there is of course, you know, in 1958 and again in 1984, there were bouts of instability that have rocked the Rif region. So there is a lot of bad blood that has been actually going on for over 60 years. I mean, throughout Morocco's post-colonial history.
And Suhail, I hear that point, but I want to jump in here because I hear you saying that, of course, it's not just Mohsen Fikri. It's the 5 who were found in the bank, and there's a history here. But there are people online saying it was the death of Mohsen that ignited something in people who may not have been agitated beforehand. There's a tweet here from Zainab. She says, it's corruption, it's abuse of power against the poor working class, and it trickles down from the top and ends in tragedy like Mohsen Fikri. So we also got a video comment from his cousin, the same person whose tweet you saw on Femi's computer. This is Samira Fikri, and this is what she told the stream.
The death of Mohsen has a huge impact on Moroccan people because they can identify with Mohsen, an ordinary young person who struggled for a decent life. Also, how he died affected a lot of people. It symbolizes the feeling how they are treated by the government, like garbage. I hope that the government takes its responsibility and is willing to listen to the people who are protesting, to begin to release the protesters and to reopen the case of Mohsen.
So, Lina, she mentions the protesters are demanding an inquiry into his death as one of the things that they want. How is the government responding to that?
Well, just as a point, I will add to the 5 martyrs in the popular bank in Morocco that were put to the fire and add there is also Kamal al-Hassani from Aith Bouayash, who was killed in a meeting of the activists back then of 20 February and after 20 February, where there were protests for over a year, peaceful protests that were treated the same way as we see now. It's just, I do believe that the lack of media showing this to the world, what made this movement much more internationalized, and also the role of the diaspora. And without knowing that also, whenever we ask for the investigations of who killed these people who went out to manifest, they always give us one simple answer. It is, the investigation will go so far. And the investigations will always go so far with this government, with these people who govern, so that they never come back. We still have nothing. We still know nothing about what happened to the 5 martyrs in the bank. We still have nothing about who killed Kamal Hassani and a lot of martyrs that were even before. As I just said before, the history of Rif is a bloody history, and there is a lot of martyrs. The martyrs of 59, of 58, of 87, of 84, of 2011, and I do believe that now the treatment doesn't change. And this fake saying about that the new Morocco, the Morocco of truth and reconciliation, is not a true reconciliation. It's just giving money to some people so that they can hold their tongue and not speak about all this oppression that is happening to everyone in the Rif, and that is
I'm just going to add this,
all over.
Because as we were trying to put this show together, we actually tried to talk to the Moroccan government, the Moroccan embassy, to lots of different places so that we could actually hear how the dialogue was going, how the conversation with people in the Rif region was going, and we got absolutely nothing back. So I have to say this because you're hearing only one perspective of what's happening in that northern part of Morocco. But on June the 22nd of this year, Mustafa El Khalfi, he's the Moroccan government spokesperson, said this about the region. And he says that the government is trying to help the citizens of the Rif. Have a look.
تمت إضافة التزامات أخرى بناء على اللقاءات مع الساكنة قضية الجامعة.
We've added additional commitments after meeting with representatives on the issue of universities, roads, fishing, and agriculture. For example, in April, we started preparing for the expansion and installation of new equipment at the Khalija Hospital. And this will be done by the end of July, according to the health minister. We are taking all steps to complete these projects, and we have sent people to supervise them.
ودرت ليه الإجراءات وكاين عليه زيارات.
So Sohail, it's because of videos and statements like that from the government that we see tweets like this. This is Amalia. She says, the last protest that we saw was needless since the government has already made progress and is still working on projects in the region to revitalize the region. Can you recognize what she's saying? And do you think that then the criticism is misplaced?
I mean, part of it is true, but it doesn't say the whole story about what's been going on really in the region.
Well,
truth is that a lot of the projects that have been actually launched or that are, basically under works in the Rif region have been launched after the protest movement has begun. Back in 2015.
Isn't that the point? Isn't the point that you protest and then you ask for better treatment and then the government responds? Is that the idea?
But, still, I mean, yeah. Just this week, I think it was yesterday, that some new equipment has been delivered to the cancer clinic, which has been basically demanded by the locals for several weeks. It has been one of the chief demands of Rifians and people in al-Hoceima in particular. But when you look at the cost of that equipment, which amounts to 12 million dirhams, and at the same time you read on the news that Morocco has just spent $14 million, which amounts to 12 times the cost of that equipment in that hospital in order to buy a residency for the kingdom's ambassador to the United States. Of course, it kind of sends a very conflicting message about, what the real intentions of what the government really is doing in the region.
Sure.
And again, I don't want to limit the debate just to the Rif region, but in Morocco in general. We've had some protests just a couple of days ago in 5-6 cities, in towns, in villages in Morocco, because of the issue, because of scarcity of water, because water supply has been rationed. We've had more protests in the southeast because basically it's an issue of governance again. It boils down to an issue of governance, and it boils down to a structural problem of prioritization of public spending. And the deficits that we are seeing at al-Hoceima have definitely kind of reached a point where the Rifians could no longer put up with it. And of course, there is the history that hasn't, that played a big part. The great deal of injustice actually has been meted out to the people in the Rifians. I don't want to compare to the rest of the region because, of course, people in Agdez in the southeast or Qalat Maguna as well, they have undergone a lot of state arbitrary, I would say. But it's really, this calls for a sea change in terms of governance and how the country is run. And to say that the government is doing this and the government is doing that, everybody in Morocco knows, who understand real politics, that it's not the government that decides, that calls the shot. The problem lies elsewhere. It's about projects where the local population has not been consulted. In 2015, King Mohammed has launched a massive investment plan for the Rif region, centering on the city of al-Hoceima, aiming to turn the city into a sort of the lighthouse of the Mediterranean, that's how it's called. And none of the projects have been launched. And again, much of the projects have been launched after the protests began. But were the locals consulted? Were the local elected officials, did they have a hand, or did they have a contribution to kind of devise, these development projects and their prioritization, or the civil society even? No. And this is why we are seeing this institutional breakdown that is preventing any sort of fruitful dialogue from taking place in the region. And that's actually what explains why the state is recourse to repression. in order to control the protests. Because
so it's interesting because you're really
means
pointing out the disconnect that I'm seeing online, at least as an outsider. So on the one hand, you have things like this. It's this tweet from someone who says, I come to al-Hoceima every summer, and I usually see no progress from year to year, yet I've seen progress made in the last 30 days. Today, an oncology facility has been inaugurated. Al-Hoceima is full of construction, roads, and sidewalks are being redone. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, though, there's criticism of what's actually going on beneath the surface of that construction. We got a video comment from Ali, who talks to us from al-Hoceima, where he visits family. He's based in Canada, but he was just there for the last recent protests, and this is what he told the stream.
The amount of force that was displayed by the Moroccan police on the march of July 20th in al-Hoceima was unprecedented. The march was attended by women, by children, and by elderly. It was supposed to be a peaceful march. Yet the Moroccan police were beating up protesters, they were beating up journalists, and they were using tear gases against them. This approach of repression is new. 8 months ago or 4 months ago, the police never intervened.
So Omar, you were also in al-Hoceima on July 20th. Can you relate to that disconnect? You saw the tweets earlier than this video comment.
I think that the economic demands, the demands were economic and social in the beginning of the movement in late 2016. I think now satisfying these demands and responding to it is not a social or economic or in public investment matter. It's a political matter. And I think what revealed the movement is that it's the failure of a development model. It's the development model that of Mohammed VI that has reached its limits, because it has been described by Democrats since years as the Benalization of Morocco, turning Morocco like Tunisian development model, which means controlling the political to benefit from the economic. And the problem in the Rif is that this region of the Rif is the main producer of the elite that led the political project of the king through the Parti Authenticité Modernité, the PAM party. And what happened in the Rif in this year is the end of the control of this elite on this region.
Okay, so Omar, Omar, we're almost at the end of this program. I want to bring in the voice of one of the protesters of al-Hoceima. He's currently in prison. His name is Nasser Safi. Let me just share his comments with our audience. Have a listen to Nasser.
We are not separatists, and the state knows it very well. But what they do is try to distract local, national, or even international opinion by saying that we are separatists. All this comes down to is one thing: social, economic, and cultural demands, and the lifting of the military status of the region.
Lina, you come from a long line of activists in your family. You've told us, all of you have told us, how many protest movements they have coming out of the Rif region. Is this one going to be the one that actually brings social economic justice, which is what the protesters want, to the region?
Yeah, just add into what was... Yeah, just add into what was
Lina,
said
we have
before.
a minute, so this is a very brief comment. Is this the one?
Yes.
After all of these years?
Okay, I don't think that this is the final one. Why? Because the project of the lighthouse that they are trying to shut the people down with this project is a project of tourism, and we as Rifans, we want projects for the whole year. We want projects who could really benefit the people from. And I don't think that when you came with hotels, with tourism equipment, and
tourism is not the answer. All right, Lina, we're at the end of the program. Thank you so much for your comments, Lina and Omar and Suhail. We will continue our conversation online using #AJStream. Thanks for watching, everybody. Take care.